So now we're going to discuss, like we talked about the input-output, we're going to discuss these five influences one more time, and we're going to discuss the impacts they have, and also we're going to discuss how the best actions we can take. So from these five, there are some that we can actually cut out completely. There are some influences that you can cut out completely. You don't need these in your life at all. And there are some that you have to find alternatives, right? You have to find ways to manage the damage that's done by them, right? So without any further ado, let's dive into the first one. So the first one is schooling and education. So the first myth that you have to dispel is that a lot of people, they come here and they think that this is the best education system in the world, and nothing is taught here except math, science, English, and they just want to make my child the best scientist possible, the best rocket scientist, the best mechanical, civil, software engineer, and that's it. No, you have to dispel this myth. You have to wake up, and you can't be naive. The first thing you have to understand is that every single curriculum, before the curriculum comes, there's a vision before it. Before the curriculum, what is there? A vision. A curriculum is curated very carefully based on a blueprint, based on a vision. So the vision precedes the curriculum, and then the curriculum is developed. So now there is a very specific psychological profile they're trying to develop. They're trying to make your child mold into, right? There's a very specific psychological profile. And now imagine if you meet a lot of the teachers that you spend in school, and there's one famous person, Khabiti actually mentioned this. He said that if you actually were to meet these teachers, you wouldn't even want to spend 5 minutes with them. That's how much of a difference there is in their vision of life and your vision of life. You wouldn't even spend 5 minutes with them. But now your children are spending 8 hours a day with them. Just let that sink in. Like, your children are spending 8 hours a day with people you don't even see eye to eye on the very basics with. Like, you may have the same parents. They may be saying that, okay, don't send my son or daughter to that person's home because they don't have, let's say they don't pray salah as much, or they don't read Quran, or maybe they play too many video games. But these are minor disagreements compared to the disagreements you may have with those teachers, right? Those teachers, they may have a totally different vision of life in public schools. So the time that your child is spending in school, and let's look at schooling and education from a few different perspectives. And I've gone through elementary, middle, high school, and university here. I've gone to Kennesaw State University. I graduated with a degree in software engineering. So personally, I've also gone through this system, and not only do I speak from, I don't speak from theory, I'm speaking from experience as well, right? So the school culture itself is problematic. The school culture itself is problematic because there are certain things your child will inevitably be introduced to, right? And one of those things are drugs, right? Harmful drugs, and they're sold by children. There's a peer pressure. There's a pressure a lot of times for your child to actually, if he wants to fit in, if he wants to be cool, wants to be at the table with the other kids, then he has to also partake in that. Number two, there is a culture of zina. There is a culture of promiscuity. There's a culture of fornication. And how is that culture is not taught through the curriculum. There is a lot of education that happens at a subliminal level. That it's not taught explicitly, but they are immersed into an environment which models it. Number one is co-education. The hormones are raging, especially in the teenage years. And the child does not know how to control. As the child grows up, the child learns how to control. And when you get married, then you learn even better, right? Then the person is in control of their self. But putting children who are still going through this, putting them in an environment where they are just interacting with each other for long hours a day, this is very harmful. And on top of that, it's not that you're putting them in this environment and telling them that don't have illicit relationships. No, rather that is encouraged, right? There's prom, there's dances, there's sexual glorification, there's shaming if you've never been in a relationship. right? There's Valentine's Day, you know, give a gift to your crush, give a crush the soda. So all of these things, they promote and create a culture of zina. So if you are not partaking in that, you're looked upon as an outcast. Like, why are you not doing this? It doesn't make any sense. This is the kind of culture you're putting your children into if they're in public schools. Number 2, from the curriculum. There is no, this might shock some people who don't know much about the public school system or the government mandated curriculum, but there is no morality taught. Or when I say no morality, no God-given morality, right? So your child will never learn from pre-K until university, to master's, to PhD, to postdoc. Never once will they learn from a curriculum book, respect your parents. Never will they learn, feed the poor. Never will they learn, be good to your neighbor. These things will never be taught. There is no moral science because there is no agreement of what is moral. Right? So moral science or morality is totally taken out, quote unquote, but what happens in reality is it is replaced with atheism. It's replaced with utilitarian morals and ethics, liberal morals and ethics, and and this, like we talked about, the liberal tarbiyah, it results in a different type of person. Another issue in schools is schools are the authority figures, right? Like we already mentioned, you have teachers, they're promoting their own ideologies, right? And also they're promoting what they are told to promote. So going back to the curriculum issues, you guys can see, I mentioned liberalism and LGBT. So right here, I have a book. I have a book right here. And I went to the library, or my family went to the library, and they saw this book on display. They saw this book on display. This was not just hidden in the shelf somewhere. This was on display. And there are books like this. There are books that have already been introduced into curriculums in different places. So what do these kinds of books teach? So I actually want to share a few pictures from this book. I have the pictures up here. So you can, I'm not going to go through every page. It's like 20 pages. But just for you to get an idea, I may not read every single word, but I want you guys to actually read them. So, okay. There is only one you in the whole world. Isn't that amazing? So you can see how it's talking about individualism. It says, you have a body, everyone does. Different bodies have different parts. Elbows, noses, belly buttons. Then they go from this to some bodies have the female private part. Some bodies have the male private part. And they explicitly mention it. I'm for the respect of the masjid, I'm not mentioning it. And everybody's body parts look different. So this, they're equating your elbow, your nose, your arms to your private parts. This is the kind of indoctrination and brainwashing that's happening and that we're set up to face in the future. And just one more thing that I'll show. So it says, whatever your feelings are, they're real. So this, I'm a girl. Today I feel like a boy. I'm a girl too. I'm a woman. I'm an in-betweener. I'm trans, right? So then it tells them that, okay, thankfully there are many brave grown-ups and kids who say, no, that's not true, that's not fair. People who work together to change unfair rules about gender are called feminists. Who are some feminists in your family? So it teaches them to look for people who kind of promote this kind of thing, or who see things differently and makes them the role models, right? So it's trying to create role models for them. And you can see it's saying that, look, the things that you do, they matter. What unfair things do you notice? What can you say or do about them? Then you can see that you have these kids, there's a confrontation going on, and they're saying that, that why, like this kid is looking that, why is there a boys and girls bathroom? Why are there two bathrooms, right? Why do we have to be segregated based on our gender? And this kid, he's like covering up the girls' bathroom sign and putting all gender, right? So they're saying that, and then at the end, it's always going to end with tolerance. And look at the very last thing in the book, empowerment and activism. They're not teaching your kids just to learn this information and be quiet. They're teaching them they're trying to empower them and activate them to be da'i, to be activists. That now that you've learned this ideology, now go spread it. Go spread it into everyone else. So this is not just going to sit with your kids, it's going to affect your other kids. They're going to work on you. They're going to work on their cousins. They're going to work on their friends. This is the kind of infiltration that's happening today. So the only reason I brought this is just to wake us up a little bit. It may be a bit shocking to see this kind of thing, but some people, they don't know this kind of thing is coming. So we have to be aware. So now the question is, what can parents do? The first thing that parents can do is evaluate what is the best option where you live. For some people, the best option may be homeschool, and some people it may be Islamic school. But it's almost a requirement that you choose one of the two. In some places, you may have a very good Islamic school, so Islamic school is the best option. Some places, you may not have a good Islamic school. You may not have any Islamic school. So you decide to choose that, no, I'm going to homeschool my kids. But what we mentioned, these are the effects if you put your children in public school. Right? So you're going to have to make that decision, and definitely if you ask, if the muftis, senior muftis are made to know about the reality of public schooling, many of them would consider that it is haram to send your children to public school. This is the reality, right? So this is something you have to consider. We don't want to get into the rulings necessarily, but this is a reality. Many ulama would say this. So what is the practical, do we want to take that risk? You know, a lot of people, they say, oh, well, they're going to get the best education there. But if let's say there's a 40 to 30% chance of your child ending up like this, is that a risk you're willing to take? Does anyone start a business where there's 40% chance of loss? You know, if you know that, right? It's a flip of a coin. No, you want to minimize the chance of loss. So, what you want to do, right? If in the worst case scenario, let's say your child is in public school right now, and you're just finding avenues. How can I put him in Islamic school? How can I homeschool him? In that interim, and even if your children are homeschooled or in Islamic school, what you want to do to counteract is connect them with the masjid. This is number one. Connect them with the masjid. And a lot of good things will follow. Number two, make sure you choose their peers properly. And we'll get more into this later. Islamic peers. And connect them with ulama who are rooted in traditional Islam. Ulama that have a sanad and a chain going back to the Prophet ﷺ. And any doubts that your child has, instead of quelling them, if they're in the environment where these doubts are being promoted, alhamdulillah, Islam, we have all the answers. Connect them with ulama who are trained in giving answers on these issues. So for Project Ihya, we have ask.projectihya.com. You can ask any question and we'll give the response on the community group, right? Or you can even contact one of us and we can, what the question is. And this is the whole area, the domain of Project Ihya, to dispel doubts and to, attack any doubts that are introduced on the intersection of Islam and modernity. So these questions can be answered through people like Maulana Asadullah, mashallah, and we have other ulama as well. So I'll turn it over to Maulana Asadullah.
How much time do we have? What time is it?
8:45.
8:45.
Go for it.
Okay, so the next one is electronics and media, and I really don't even feel like I have to say much about electronics and media. It's that one drug that everybody knows we're addicted to, and we know its harms, and we know what it's done, and we know what it's doing, but we can't get away from it. It's a very strange, this is one of the strongest tools that shaitan has, I think, in the modern world. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the promise of shaitan, that, I'll come min fawqihim wa what is it? ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ, that I will be attacking them from the front, from the right, from the left, from beneath their feet, from behind. And that's literally the world we live in. We live in this world that's surrounded by media, right? You're constant, we talked about input, output earlier. In today's world, you have constant input. Back in those days, when people still lived more of a rural lifestyle, you didn't have constant input. Lights, information, advertisement, invitation. You didn't have this constant barrage of information and enticement. Right? You live a very simple life. You saw, So this is one of those things that we have to be vigilant, and we stress it a lot, and it seems like one of those things that we can't get ourselves off of. Later on, when we talk about some of the other influences, you'll see that a lot of the solutions, it starts with us first. that we ourselves have to set an example. If I'm sitting there all day on Facebook and social media, and I give no time to my kids, then don't expect my kids to be any different, right? First, let's go through some of the issues with electronic media, how it's used. You know, sometimes we say, no, media is good, let's use it for an Islamic purpose. That's great. Use it for an Islamic purpose, make use of it, and, you know, we're doing it right now, as a matter of fact. However, the harms of it far outweigh, because the way it's being used for harm, being used for harm, far more than it's being used for good. So it's a tool to control populaces, right? If they want all the youngsters now to follow a certain style or trend, it only has to become popular on media, and everybody will, you know, we teach kids in the evening and stuff like that, and just the terminology they use, and just the habits that they've adopted, just the things that they want, just the things that we want. You know, sometimes we think, I'm free and I choose what I want and I'm this nonconformist. No, you're actually controlled and you want the things they want you to want. Right? So it's a control tool. Just keep that in mind every time you are exposed to it. Number 2, manufacturing consent. You don't agree to something, if you watch enough media, you will eventually agree to it. Why? Because they're going to convince you. And not always logically convince you or something like that. They will play with emotions. Look at this book. This is a form of media. Right? This is written for toddlers. These are not making logical claims here. Matter of fact, there's pages in there that are completely illogical. Right?
The whole book is illogical.
Well, yeah, in that sense. But for example, it's telling you that he can be a she. There's parts in there that says that men as a whole are not stronger than physically. He's talking about physically stronger than women. That's a lie. Why would you tell children and toddlers that? Right? Now a little girl goes and she thinks she can wrestle with a boy. She's going to get hurt. So they will convince you that you're wrong and they're right. Keep that in mind. Subliminal messaging. That's probably the way they do it for a lot of things. You know, I was listening to a psychologist. He was explaining one time. He was like, we don't realize how much of the choices we make are actually subliminally put in our mind. And he did this whole thing where he had people, he gathered a few people, and then he was guessing what they were thinking about based on certain questions. And it was a whole thing. He was making them think that he had this magical power. But then after that, he explained to them that, no, the reason you responded red was because I had put a red sign outside. So I knew that subliminally that had been already recorded. So sometimes you wake up in the morning and you say, what color do I want to wear today? You know, the color of my shoes. Or should I wear my white sweater or should I wear my, red sweater? And you'll say, you know what, today I'm going to wear my red sweater. You don't realize that that choice that you're making has actually been implanted in your head probably last night when you were watching TV and you saw your favorite actor wearing a red sweater. But you don't realize it. You don't realize it. So subliminal messaging is a thing. If you don't believe me, read up on it. It can warp reality. It can make lies true. Matter of fact, in a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it mentions that closer to the day of judgment, people will believe the liar and they will disbelieve the truth teller. A time will come where, as we have today, people say that, oh, there was that person in that town, he was a liar. Yeah, that Musaylimatul Kadhab, or that so-and-so, he would be known by name. A time will come where people will say, oh, that person, yeah, amazing personality, he's very truthful. We will find it amazing. We will be able to pinpoint the truth tellers because the liars will be everywhere. Everyone will be promoting a lie. Everybody will be involved in a lie. And unfortunately, that happens. That's what's happening today. A lot of times, the opinions that we hold, the things that we say, we don't even realize that it's not true. Time wastage and addiction. I don't have to say much on this. I think everybody can testify and has felt at some point in their life that, God, Lee, I've wasted like 3 hours of my day on Facebook, right? Turns immoral figures into idols. Again, this is so apparent. I don't need to mention it, but it just needs for us to think about it. This is also mentioned in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the worst of people will become the leaders. And it's through electronics and media that the most immoral people are now the idols that our children are setting up for themselves. In the past, people would tell their children stories of Sahaba, tell their children stories of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They would tell their children wise stories of wise people and anecdotes and things like that. Today you ask a child who's your star, idol, and they will probably mention somebody that's rich and famous and extremely immoral. Normalization of vice. Normalization of vice. This has not just affected children, this has affected adults. So you can imagine what is done to children. Today, children, they look at evil, they look at vices very differently than how the elders look at it. You know, a lot of the elders here, they grew up in probably Muslim societies and cultures and countries where they have a natural distaste for haram, for evil. Your children don't have that. They don't have that natural. In their mind, they're wondering, why are my parents so against this? Why do they hate this so much? Moving along, parental strategies. What can we do? The first thing we can do is try to limit access and monitor their usage. Your children is, like we mentioned in the beginning, it's your biggest asset. You put in your money, your time, your pain, sleepless nights, energies, your hopes, your dreams in that child, only to let that child be lost in this ocean. In this ocean that we cannot imagine, and especially we don't throw them even a lifeline, a tube, nothing. We just throw them in this ocean and we're like, all right, Salman, you're good. And then it is not right how sometimes we come and we blame the kids. Look at the kids nowadays and this and that. How much of that blame are we taking? So limit access and monitor. Use the highest level of access control you can manage, right? And do it with hikmah. Do it with hikmah. Don't make devices your child's babysitter or pacifier. Sometimes we're tired and then we just like turn on the TV and you guys watch TV and I'll get on with my whatever I'm doing. The kid already spent 8 hours with some other adult in school, and then he comes home. Now they spend another 3-4 hours with the TV, and the TV is going to teach them all its values. Trust me, none of those are Islamic values. We talked about Islamically. So finally, for parental strategies, implement in your own life and in your child's life non-media alternatives. Okay? What are non-media alternatives? What are we talking about here? So we're talking about things like get your kids involved in sports, right? If they had sports to do, if they had any outdoor activities, it's not sports. Maybe the kid doesn't have any, passion for any kind of sport. Any other kind of outdoor activity, right? Swimming, cycling, whatever it is. Well, I guess that could come into sports. But, playing games that are not, media related, and spend time with your children. They have a lot to learn from you. You're their parent. Don't you want your child to be a reflection of you, right? To hold your values, to carry your ideas forward. In reality, we just have the kid and we give it to society, and the society then does what it wants with those children. And it uses our children for their benefit. We don't get to use our children for the benefit of Islam.
So the next thing is friends and peer pressure. And this is something that has really destroyed a lot of good homes. You have a child who's doing well, he's focused, he's doing well in school, good grades, everything is perfect. Then all of a sudden, you see that he's using drugs, right? And then one thing leads to another, and it ends up somewhere else. So this all comes from bad company and peer pressure. So it's very important that we take care of who our children's friends are. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, الرجل على دين خليله فلينظر أحدكم من يخالف. That a person is on the way of life of his friend. He's on the deen of his friend. He may be Muslim he has recited the kalima, but if he's hanging out with a person whose lifestyle is a gangster lifestyle, whose lifestyle is an immoral lifestyle, then his deen, his way of life will be like that person, right? So, you have non-Muslim people. This usually we don't find in Muslim homes, but let's say a non-Muslim, if your child has non-Muslim friends, this is extremely dangerous. You can have a child who has like 2 dads, 2 moms, parents who are not supervising their kids, right? Abhorrent views on sexuality, drugs, alcohol, all of these things will infiltrate and enter into your child. Then you have Muslim homes that are devoid of deen. There's no salah, no Quran, no du'as, no ta'aleem, no learning, teaching in the home, right? Are those really kids that you want your children to hang out with? Kids who are raised in a home where there's no morals being taught, where there's no salah being prayed, there's no hadith being read, right? So you have to make sure that you find the families that are like-minded, that share the same vision, that have kids of the same age, and you introduce them. You work together to build that bond, like to solder that bond right from the beginning, right? And I'll just mention a couple ayat of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَوْمَ يَعَضُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ. On the day of judgment, the zalim, the person who's going to Jahannam, he's going to bite his hand. وَيَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ الرَّسُولِ سَبِيلًا يَا وَيْلَتَى لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أَتَّخِذْ فُلَانًا خَلِيلًا. He's going to say, I wish I had followed the messenger. I wish I had not befriended that person. That Allah mentions in Surah Safat, that Allah mentions a scene in Jannah. The people of Jannah will be together, and they're going to be, they'll have a majlis set up. They're all going to be facing each other, talking, remembering about dunya. So then, one of them will say, قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ إِنِّي كَانَ لِي قَرِينٌ. He's going to say, oh, subhanAllah, I remember, and this is just a dialogue, a discussion between the people of Jannah. They're chilling, they're just remembering, right? إِنِّي كَانَ لِي قَرِينٌ. I had this one acquaintance in dunya, this one person I remember. يَقُولُ أَإِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُصَدِّقِينَ أَإِذَا مِنَّا وَكُنَّا تُرَابًا وَعِظَامًا أَإِنَّا لَمَدِينُونَ. So are you also from one of, you should tell me, are you also one of those guys who believe that when we die, when we turn to dirt and dust, our bones, there's nothing but bones left, that again we're going to be resurrected? You believe in a next life? You believe in a God? Then he's going to tell the people of Jannah, قَالَ هَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُطَّلِعُونَ. Do you know where he is? I don't see him here. فَاطَّلَعَ فَرَآهُ فِي سَوَاءِ الْجَحِيمِ. Then he'll be made to know, and he'll know that he'll find out that he is in fi wasat al-jahim, in the middle of Jahannam, burning. Then when he sees this person, he'll say, قَالَ تَاللَّهِ إِن كِدْتَ لَتُرْدِينَ يعني إِنَّكَ كِدْتَ لَتُفْسِدُنِي. That you, by Allah, أُقْسِمُ بِاللَّهِ إِن كِدْتَ لَتُرْدِينَ. In here is مُخَفَّفَ. That definitely you were, like I was about to follow you. I was about to be friends with you, and you were going to destroy me. وَلَوْلَا نِعْمَةُ رَبِّي لَكُنْتُ مِنَ الْمُحْضَرِينَ. If it was not for the fadl, the ni'mah of Allah, لَكُنْتُ مِنَ الْمُحْضَرِينَ أي مِنَ الْحَاضِرِينَ مَعَكَ فِي جَهَنَّمَ. I would have been with you in Jahannam right now. So this is the effect of bad company and bad friends. They lead to Jahannam. But good friends, Allah says, الْأَخِلَّاءُ يَوْمَئِذٍ بَعْضُهُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ إِلَّا الْمُتَّقِينَ. All friendships will end in enmity on the day of judgment, except good friends. Friends who befriended each other with taqwa, for the sake of Allah. Those friends will help you on the day of judgment.
So now we go on to the next influence, music, and it kind of comes back to anyway, but the music actually comes into kind of the last thing that I talked about, which is electronics and media. But we put music separately because it is something that in Islam, we don't want to get into a discussion about is it haram or halal to listen to music. Let's think about one thing before we even talk about that, or without thinking about the difference of opinion, about music. The music that exists and the music that everyone is listening to. The music that is out there, the music that the kids want to listen to, is that halal or haram? بِإِتِّفَاقِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. There is no mufti out there that's going to tell you that music that is out there, that everyone's listening to, that's halal. There isn't any way. Why? Here's a list of things why, reasons why. I mean, we could give more. I don't know how many we have here. We have a list of reasons why that music is not only haram, but harmful. Extremely harmful. All of the problems that we talked about before, music is like, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was poetry. That's what that was like the multimedia. That was the advertisement. That was the propaganda. That was the tool. That was the main tool. In today's world, it's music. Right? You want to introduce a new style, a new idea, a new value into the kids, let it come out in the music industry. Right? That's why they make the most money, and they have the most likes and views and all of that. So what is the things that music is normalizing? It's not normalizing good values, and it's not normalizing spirituality and all of these things. What is it normalizing? What is music? Profanity, number one. Number two, sexual promiscuity and objectification, right? How are women objectified in music videos and things like that? Drugs, right? And let me say another thing about music. In music, you have different genres of music, right? You have pop, you have rap, you have this, you have that. Those aren't just genres of music. They have a culture with it. Each one of these has a culture with it. Don't think that my kid is just going to listen to the music and just going to appreciate the aesthetic value of it and all that. No, it's going to come with the aesthetic value, sure, okay, maybe he'll appreciate that. But it's going to come with the profanity, the culture, the values, the clothing even. Every genre has its own style of clothing. It has its own style of speech. It has its own way of thinking and its own things that it's promoting. Right? Haram objectives, haram obsessions, materialism. Nowadays music in the West is not talking about, stoicism. And it's not talking about, leave the dunya and all of that. You're not going to get that from music. It's telling you about how great money is. Right? They're all throwing money and, flashy cars and etc. Devil worship. And you might be thinking that I'm going off on the extreme here. Now it's become like a thing. The devil worship is promoted in music. What's that? Do we have that slide?
Yeah, we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so we put some lyrics here. We didn't put it big, and we're not going to read them out because it's extremely and we actually had somebody edit it. But these are just like common lyrics from today. And if you look at these lyrics and you just read them on the paper, you realize what kind of garbage it is. There's absolute devil worship, like clear cut. There's clear-cut devil worship, and your kids are listening to this. It's kufr. Devil worship is kufr. Your kids are listening to it and enjoying kufr. How can that be? How can we allow that to happen? So please be very careful with when it comes to music. Right? We get into these discussions of, is it haram? Is it halal? Don't even close that door from the beginning, because what has pervaded music is basically shaitan's ultimate tool against your children.
I can't even bring myself to leave that slide up. And after it was rectified, you can say to some degree. So I would really recommend everybody downloads the PowerPoint. Go to whatsapp.projectihya.com and you'll join the WhatsApp group. And in the slides, you'll see that one slide. Read through those. Read through those and see what kind of. You'll be shocked. Absolutely shocked.
Yeah, it'll make this book look like a kid's book, what it actually is. This is actually a pretty mild book. We chose this one because it wasn't that bad. But the other books in there are much worse with graphics and everything. So that's also just to inform you about that. I think that's all for the music part, the daily exposure. So we talk about daily exposure also. This is just something that we've covered all the major influences. Daily exposure is also a major influence. Things your child is exposed to on a day-to-day basis, right? Like styles of dressing, inappropriate hairstyles, right? Things that we wouldn't do ourselves. But for some reason we've said, our children should be allowed to do it, or music that's playing in the stores, we don't have control over that. These are just daily exposures, things we don't really have control over. And our children are still exposed to it. It still goes into their eyes, and it still goes through their ears, and it gets to their heart. So incorrect ideologies, they'll hear about it, they'll see these things. So that's something that is also it breaks down into two categories. There is a level of daily exposure that's avoidable, and there's a level that is unavoidable. Now, avoidable means like, okay, let's go to a crowded beach. That's avoidable. Go when it's less when there's no crowd, right? Go to a more private area. Go to go to a more private beach, I guess. Needless wandering in the markets, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the hadith has stated that the markets are the most hated, detestable places for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because it's all dunya. On everybody's mind is dunya. Right? And now we go there, that's where we go to hang out, for example. Look, if we're going to eat, okay. If we're going to shop, okay. But just to kind of hang out and walk around and just be exposed to everything that's there, it's unhealthy for ourselves and our children. entertainment venues like concert theaters, hookah lounges and all this kind of stuff. Now, I get it, hookah lounges, kids may not be in the hookah lounges, but, sometimes we allow our kids to go to concerts and to theaters, and all the problems that came with music, with multimedia, with peers, all of that is compounded now in one location, in one venue for your children, and then we send our children there. And then we expect that and we think we're doing them a favor. Wallah, you're destroying their dunya and their akhirah. Just keep that in mind. You're destroying their dunya and their akhirah. If anything, if nothing, maybe the kid, obviously, we're not saying that every kid is going to go and is going to come back completely off the rocks. But what we are saying is that those memories, those images, those emotions, what he felt, what he experienced will forever be in his mind. Will forever be in his mind. And we'll be responsible for that. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this list. We're out of time, and maybe we want to leave a few minutes for Q&A if we have the time. So going out on bad days or times, we know there are times and there are days where we know there's going to be a lot of nonsense out. Avoid it. That's avoidable. Choosing times wisely. We can choose the times we go out. Unavoidable, things that are unavoidable. Shopping, halal entertainment. We're not saying don't have fun. We're not saying don't take your kids out to have fun. It's great for family health, connecting with family and structure and all that kind of stuff. It's important to take your kids out. Family trips, vacations, do all of it. But avoid what can be avoided is all we're saying. Avoid what can be avoided. Daily interactions and acquaintances. And then finally, the things that we can do when it comes to unavoidable. Parental vigilance, number one. Limiting time in marketplaces. We don't spend too much time. Where we don't need to. Where we see there's negative input, let's try to limit it. Inculcate hatred. Now, we use a strong word here, and I hope people understand why. Inculcate hatred for sins. Not for people, for sins in our children's minds. You have to, I don't even like to use the word indoctrinate, but you have to teach your kids to hate sin. If we don't teach it to them, if we don't teach them that it's something that is detestable, then we leave them open to it. Teach it to them when they're very young, when they're still impressionable. And counterbalance all of these negative exposures, these daily negative exposures, with things at home like ta'aleem and family amal. Do things as a family, but do khair, do good things as a family, right? Do a ta'aleem at home. Make sure they see you praying. Make sure they see you making dua. Make sure they see amal in the home. A lot of times our homes are also void of. Rasulullah sallallahu explicitly said in a hadith, don't make your homes grave. Don't make them like dead homes. And how do you make your home alive? With amal. Read Quran in the house. Make sure they see those things. And build relationship with your children so you can have an open discussion with them. They can ask you, right? So they get the information from you, not from everyone and everything else.